Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever in the world you are. What we are seeing here is a picture of one of the schools in rural Zimbabwe. Yes, it is depressing. This is a classroom, and these are some of the kids going to school. The level of poverty speaks volumes. What kind of education are these children having? I think anyone can guess for themselves. Zimbabwe is one of the countries where the leaders and the ordinary people have been going in different directions. The ruling elite have become incredibly rich, filthy rich, and yet the overwhelming majority have sunk deeper and deeper into poverty. This is a reality, a social reality that we cannot run away from. The country's infrastructure has all but collapsed. Even for those in the urban centers, the country is failing to supply them with basic needs such as running water and electricity. And as we can see here, this is a rural school. Education and the healthcare in the rural schools have all but collapsed. In 2019, the Member of Parliament for Chiredzi South, this is a rural constituency, called all the headmasters in his constituency to a meeting. It turned out that that year, at grade 7 level, Form 2, Form 4, and Form 6, not even one school, the best performing schools had a 3% pass rate. The majority of them actually had 0%, but the best performing ones was 3%. This is where we have reached. And Chiredzi is not unique in that regard. The majority of the people in Zimbabwe live in the rural areas. And if you live if you go to a school in a classroom like this, is it surprising that there is a 0% pass rate? 0% pass rate. And this has been going on for decades now. Where are we going as a country? If we fail to educate the children, tomorrow they will be adults. They will not be able to provide for themselves or their children. This is a problem we are building on. We are compounding our own problem. And yet this is the reality that is happening there. And like I said, the rich are becoming incredibly rich. And they don't seem to even care that this is happening. Our leaders continue to spend money as if there's no tomorrow. This has come out recently that the president, Emerson Mnangagwa, has just acquired for himself a new jet worth 54 million US dollars. One cannot understand what is the thinking behind it. How can we be spending taxpayers' money? Let's face it, it is taxpayers' money, directly or indirectly, on such extravagance when the country's education is in such a mess. When we can't provide health care for hundreds of our people. And then this is exactly what is happening here. The plan itself is, yes, it competes with all luxury planes. You can have a tour of it. This is the plane at the airport. And this is the inside of the plane. Seem to be competing here with first world countries. $54 million US dollars. Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. And it's a plane that will cost millions of dollars every year to run. And there is Mnangagwa himself. What is interesting here about what is going on here is that this has been made possible because Mnangagwa can rig elections. That is the essence of the argument here. You can see why, when you have got such a lifestyle, would you want to give it up? Of course not. But when millions of people are living in abject poverty, if you were to have all free, fair, and credible elections, of course, you have no chance to lose it. So what is happening here is Mnangagwa is rigging the 2023 elections. And what is more, he's getting away with it. He needs to rig the elections because he cannot win free and fair and credible elections. He needs to rig the elections so that he can stay in power and continue to enjoy the extravagant lifestyle that he and his colleagues are now accustomed to after 43 years of being in power. But most important of all, he is able to rig elections because he knows he can get away with it. Why do I say that? Well, we cannot deny, and unfortunately, many Zimbabweans out there have been denying it. But the truth is, we cannot deny that in 43 years, we had many opportunities to end the Zanu PF dictatorship. The best of those opportunities, without any doubt, was during the GNU of 2008 to 2013. SADC had forced Robert Mugabe and Zanu PF to sign the 2008 Global Political Agreement, in which it was agreed that a raft of democratic reforms would be implemented, designed to stop the blatant cheating and the wanton violence of 2008. A government of national unity was formed whose principal task, primary task, was to implement the democratic reforms. And yet, after 5 years, not even one token reform was implemented. Not even one. Many Zimbabweans failed to comprehend what was going on at the time. And it is tragic that many of them, even today, 10 years since the end of the GNU, are still failing to comprehend that. But hopefully, slowly but surely, a few people are beginning to appreciate what actually happened during the GNU. Without understanding what happened during the GNU, we are not going to get out of this mess. Because if you understand that the primary purpose of the GNU was to implement the democratic reforms, you will also understand that Morgan Tsvangirai and his MDC friends sold out during that period. In fact, they sold out to the point where they've since given up on getting the reforms implemented. And what they've been doing ever since was participate in flawed elections, which they know they're flawed, only for the purpose of sharing in the spoils of power. This is what has been happening here. As much as Zanu PF would want to rig the elections, if it was not for the MDC/CCC who keep on participating and giving the regime, the whole process, some credibility, Zanu PF would not get away with rigged elections. That is the truth. I cannot emphasize it strongly enough. Participating in the 2023 elections is the most ridiculous thing anyone can do. Any one of us can do. It's okay for Nelson Chamisa and his friends Tendai Biti, David Coulthard, and so forth. They are participating because they know Zanu PF is giving away a few seats, particularly in the urban centers, to entice the opposition to participate. Zanu PF needs the opposition to participate because it has got to give the impression that these elections are free, fair, and credible. And hence the reason why they need the opposition to participate. But we cannot and we must not pretend we don't know what is happening here. We know the opposition have given up on reforms, have given up on free, fair, and credible elections. That's why they are participating in these flawed elections. We really cannot afford to drag this nation deeper and deeper into this economic crisis. It is an economic crisis, but one of our own making. And that point must be made.
Your Excellency, the meetings that we have been having,
we really cannot afford to keep pretending that we are getting somewhere when we know we are not. This Zanu PF regime is not going to change anything, and that is the truth. Zanu PF has been in power for all these years, and they are desperate to remain in power. And as long as they are able to rig the elections and get away with it, that is exactly what they're going to continue to do. We have got to realize here that we have got two problems here. Yes, initially the problem was Zanu PF, but it is not only Zanu PF now. We've got the problem with the opposition. The opposition are participating in these elections to give the process some credibility and therefore then give the results some legitimacy. If we are going to break this cycle, we need to tackle the opposition as much as we need to tackle Zanu PF to stop them rigging the elections. I have often quoted this admission, confession, I call it, by David Coulthard in his book. I think it's worth revisiting again. This is a quotation from David Coulthard's book. He was referring to the 2013 elections. And in it, he says, the worst aspect for me about the failure to agree a coalition was that both MDCs couldn't now do the obvious, withdraw from the elections. The electoral process was so flawed, so illegal, that the only logical step was to withdraw, which would have compelled SADC to hold Zanu PF to account. But such was the distrust between the MDC-T and MDC-N that neither could withdraw for fear the other would remain in the election, winning seats and giving the process credibility. In other words, the only reason why the MDCT and MDCN participated in an election process that was so flawed, that was so illegal, that the logical thing to have done was to withdraw. They still went on to participate out of greed. Coulthard was writing about the 2013 elections. In 2018, 4 of the main MDC factions did come together actually and form the coalition, the MDC Alliance. Still, there was no talk of boycotting those elections. Why? Because of the same reason, greed. In fact, in his book, Coulthard should have also admitted that the MDC had failed to implement even one meaningful reform in the 5 years of the GNU for the same reason, greed. Mugabe bribed them with the trappings of high office. They forgot about reforms. We cannot pretend we can solve this problem without addressing the real big problems we have got here. Yes, at one time, Zanu PF was the elephant in the room, but now we also have another elephant in the room, the opposition. Zanu PF has been able to hide behind the opposition's greed, rig elections, confident the opposition will participate and give the process some credibility and give the results some legitimacy. And that is exactly what has been happening. I think there's been 10 years since the end of the GNU. It is absolutely unforgivable that there are some Zimbabweans out there who still fail to realize that the GNU was our get out of jail card. And MDC/CCC failed to play it. And even now, they are still holding that card, but they'll never play it because they know Zanu PF is giving away a few seats. And as long as they've got a chance of winning those few seats, they'll keep on participating. In fact, Mnangagwa has been so clever now that he even rewards those who participate and fail to get anything. That's why he created this animal called Pollard, where all those who contest the presidential election and lose, but admit that Mnangagwa is the election process was free, fair, and credible, they are rewarded, given cars. Last time they were asking for diplomatic passports. Who knows? Maybe they've been given diplomatic passports now. The opposition is no longer fighting in the ordinary man's corner. The opposition is now fighting in Zanu PF's corner. That is the reality that I would like every Zimbabwean out there to take home. We cannot afford to pretend we have free, fair, and credible elections and participate in these flawed elections. We don't. The question is, why are we participating? Nelson Chamisa and company are participating out of greed. They are after the few seats that are on offer. But for the majority of ordinary Zimbabweans there, they're participating out of ignorance. They believe whatever Nelson Chamisa tells them. And they believe that Triple C are going to win big, win rigged elections. They're going to win them big. How? They don't say. We know that there's no chance of winning these elections. None. But by participating, we are giving the process credibility. And to be quite honest, the international community, as much as they would like to help us, are not going to help us because we are not helping ourselves. We are the ones who are participating. The international community have all been saying you should not take part in these elections without reforms. That argument has been put forward. SADC is the one that actually initiated the global political agreement. And throughout the GNU, it was SADC who were pushing MDC leaders to implement reforms. The ordinary Zimbabwean, except for maybe a few handful, were calling for MDC to implement reforms. The rest, we were not interested. After the GNU, after the opposition failed to implement any reforms, the ordinary Zimbabweans did not take Chamisa and company to account to task for failing to implement reforms. They didn't. Why? One has got to ask, why didn't we do it? But whatever reasons, what matters now is that we should be seen to take our task or responsibility of holding these Zanu PF leaders to account with the seriousness the matter demands. And to keep on pretending that it doesn't matter simply is not good enough. We have got to take and show the initiative that we really are serious about having reforms and free and fair elections. And the most positive way we can do that is to stop participating in a process that we know is flawed, that we know is totally meaningless. We should not be helping Chamisa and company to sell our cause. Our cause should be very clear. We want reforms to be implemented so that we can have free, fair, and credible elections. Participating for the sake of a few gravy train seats is the most ridiculous thing that we can do. To what end and purpose? Mnangagwa doesn't care who wins those few seats. All he cares about is that the opposition participate in droves. I think we should be demanding reforms before elections. And that's the only way we can stop this madness. This madness that has ended up with a situation where the ruling elite are living in unparalleled luxury, whilst the overwhelming majority are living in abject poverty with absolutely no hope for the future. One has got to ask, what chance does a child who is going to a school a grass-thatched school like that have with a modern child in the developed world? We have got computers, the internet, and all this help. How can they compete? Of course, they will never compete. I think it is ridiculous that we should be writing off a whole nation just for the sake of a few ruling elite so that they could live in unparalleled luxury. I cannot think how anyone can justify spending all these millions of dollars on planes, mansions, cars, whilst the overwhelming majority are sinking deeper and deeper into abject poverty. We really have to do something to end this, and it is within our power to end it. Make no mistake about it. The Zanu PF dictatorship, at the present moment, the one thing that is sustaining it is the participation in flawed elections. That is the one thing that is sustaining it. Why somebody stubbornly continues to participate in an election that is he himself, they themselves, David Coulthard and Chamisa, they all admit these elections are flawed. These elections are illegal. They know they will never win them, but they keep on participating out of greed. People risked so much to get Nelson Chamisa and company elected into office, only to be shortchanged. That is the truth. That is the reality. And I think we need to address this problem with the urgency the matter demands. This is a class, somebody says, wakes up in the morning and say, I'm going to school. And that is the classroom that they're going to. And they've been going through, you can see that that structure is probably 5 years old. That is where they've been going to school year after year after year. What chance do they have? And meanwhile, the country's wealth is being squandered by the few on luxuries. And now the opposition has joined in. They're participating for their share of the spoils of power. This is a scandal that must be stopped. This is madness. I think it's high time people stand up and say, no, enough is enough. And in this case here, the only rational thing we can do actually is stop participating in an election process and give the process legitimacy. Why that is so difficult for some people to comprehend beggars belief. Unbelievable. But this is the image that I think we should take home today and know that that is the price those children are paying so that Mnangagwa can fly his $54 million jet. I don't see how anyone can say that is a fair price. Thank you, and good night.